Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well on this Tuesday, the 3rd of December, as we close in on the holiday season. We close in on the end of the 2024 football season, the end of the calendar year, and the start of great things in 2025, right? Hopefully that's the situation for you and yours, wherever you might be. Again, I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. You can find my work here at Fantasy Guru. Duh, I just said it. You can find me here on Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You might say to yourself, Ray, why aren't you here Wednesdays? Well, Justin Fensterman's here on Wednesdays. So the show is here every day, Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it's free. So please tell a friend, spread the word, all that kind of good stuff. On Wednesdays, I'm with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show. That's Monday through Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. That show is 3 to 6 Eastern. I'm on with Jeff every Wednesday. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday here. Wednesdays with Jeff on SiriusXM. What are we talking about today? Well, it's a Tuesday, so we'll visit with Armando Marsal. He usually joins us about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, so about a half hour from now. Armando will stop by and we'll talk waiver wires. We'll talk what to do with Isaac Guerendo. Do you blow your budget? Is he going to be the league winner that I said he would be back 4 months ago? We'll find out. Sincere McCormick, Braylon Allen, Chris Rodriguez, Adam Thielen, Elijah Moore, Parker Washington, on and on. We'll talk to Armando about some of the options on the waiver wire. We'll also talk before then, as I do every Tuesday. We'll review Monday Night Football. It was a banger. It wasn't quite to the level of the Steelers and Bengals game from the weekend, but 41-32, the Broncos defeated the Browns, moving to 8-5. We'll talk all about that game. We'll also talk about the situation with the Niners backfield. Obviously, the big story. The news came down after our show yesterday, so we'll just review it quickly. I'm sure everyone's heard about it, thought about it, made the moves, all that kind of stuff to this point. Dallas Goedert may not play this week. Tight end position, actually. Ugh. Dallas Goedert may not play not only this week, but for a few weeks. Theo Johnson's been placed on the injured list. Is McConkey going to play? What's about Romeo Doubs? And what's the deal with Trevor Lawrence and Azeez Al-Shaair? So we'll talk about that, the hit and all that kind of stuff and the suspension that was handed down. So we'll talk about that. Again, you can find us here every day on the show. And before we talk more in depth about all the information here that's on the screen, do you like the slightly blue? I modified the blue again, so it looks a little more blue. It's still kind of gray. I don't know. I'm trying my best. I can't make it too blue because then you can't see it. I'm trying. I think it's better than all white, so we're going with it. But every day we've been here on the show, and I've been saying, look, you want to get involved with us at FantasyGuru.com, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. You can get all of our football stuff for one price. You can get the football, college football. You can get NFL. You can get NFL DFS, NFL seasonal, NFL wagering. You get everything we do throughout the entirety of the playoffs. The only thing you don't get is a Super Bowl betting guide because that's a separate thing. But you get everything else, every article, all the live streams, access to all the Discord rooms, all of it for that one low price. And guess what? Yeah, do you see it there on the screen? It's $65. We lowered the price yet again. No longer $99.99. It's now $65 the rest of the way. So for one price, you click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. You get seasonal football, you get DFS football, you get wagering football, one price, one package, all throughout the playoffs, minus that Super Bowl betting guide for $65. Let's do it, folks. Let's go. As we say, become part of the Elite Mafia, the largest active community in fantasy sports. We got you. Come check it out over at FantasyGuru.com. Okay, let's talk about the game last night. 41-32, the Broncos did defeat the Browns, as I previously mentioned. Let's start out on the Brown side of things. And, how do you not start out with Jameis Winston, who is just, he's remarkable. The thing is, he never disappoints because you can talk about players and sometimes they live up to expectations. Sometimes they fail to live up to expectations. Sometimes you're not sure who players are. Well, we know exactly who he is, Jameis Winston. He never disappoints. He threw over 497 yards and 4 touchdowns yesterday. It's a massive effort against a good Broncos defense. A massive effort. 58 passes. Wow. Now he threw 3 picks, and 2 of them were pick sixes. So, it's one of those scenarios where you get the good and you get the bad. From a fantasy perspective, 497 and 4 overrides everything. right? It doesn't matter how bad he was in the interception game. It's just simply not relevant. And if you look at his, let's pull him up real quickly to see. Again, all scoring systems are different, how they record points for interceptions and all that. But Jameis Winston, number 1 quarterback in the league I'm looking at right here. Just remarkable, right? So it is the full Winston experience. He was smiling. He was throwing terrible picks at the goal line. Doing tremendous things, making tremendous throws, and bottom line, utilizing his weapons extremely effectively in the passing game. As you see there on the screen, we do have 6 teams on bye. What the heck happened there? ES. What is Ray doing with the ES? Oh boy, I had a rough morning this one. I can't type, by the way. Here are the teams that are on bye this week: the Colts, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Commanders, the Ravens, the Texans. So those 6 teams are on bye in this coming week. Jameis Winston, not on a bye. Jameis Winston, I don't know if he's on the waiver wire. He could be in certain leagues. You might get all excited and say, I'm going to pick him up this week. He just shredded the Broncos in Denver. Kind of, right? 3 picks and all that. Then you look at his matchup in Week 14. It's another road game, and it's in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh was just torched by Joe Burrow. They're going to be out for blood. So is Winston a good pickup if he's on the waiver wire this week? He's going to throw it. He's going to make some positive plays. He's going to have those negative plays. And again, really difficult to get excited about him at the Steelers. But the numbers are impressive. And his work on the road, he's averaging like 450 yards and 3 touchdowns on the road. He did for 395 yards of the road game, I think. So, he's in play. I'd be cautious, though, against that Steelers team that's going to be out looking for revenge after they got smoked last time out. So if Winston goes and has great performances and puts up these huge numbers, again, 497 yards and 4 touchdowns, must have some bangers as pass catchers for the Browns, right? Well, we did. Cedric Tillman was unable to play. He still has that head injury, so he was unable to clear the concussion protocol, so he was out. They tried a little bit of Jabari Thrash. He caught a couple of passes. They went with Woods, who basically played a lot of X last night. He had 3 catches for 43 yards. These are Ant's 3 pieces. Whiteheart had a target. Akins had a target. Kadarius Toney even had a target. He barely played, but he had a target. Those are the ancillary pieces. Now let's talk about the primary weapons in this offense, and there's 3 guys. Interestingly enough, it would be 4 with Tillman, but with Tillman out of the mix, it's only 3. Starting out with Jerry Jeudy. And someone asked in Discord this morning over at fantasyguru.com, which again, if you subscribe tab, top right corner of fantasyguru.com, you subscribe there. What do you get? Well, you get access to the Discord rooms. You can ask questions, and you get access, because it's a one package, not one price. You get access to the seasonal Discord rooms. You get access to the DFS Discord rooms. You get access to the gambling DFS, the gambling rooms. So all of them, right? And one of the questions I got this morning is the time we start taking, Jerry Jeudy seriously in the fantasy space. In my response, which I didn't get to because I saw it literally 30 seconds before I started the show, we had Jerry Jeudy ranked 27th this week. That's taken him seriously. Jeudy is basically, since Winston became the quarterback, catching 5 balls for 70 yards every week. And the average is obviously way above that, but he's 5 for 70 every week. Last night he had the game of his career in his revenge game. 9 catches, 235 yards, and a touchdown, ripping off these huge plays all over the field, doing dynamic things. Jerry Jeudy has been an enigma for the majority of his career. The good news for Jeudy and for the pass catchers of the Browns is that, again, Winston is going to throw the ball a ton. He throws the ball 40 times every game, and he's going to keep throwing it no matter whether he has success or not. He's going to get it. And there's so many quarterbacks in this league we talk about all the time, or I talk about all the time. I say, just get the ball to your guys. Like, why is Marvin Harrison getting 5 or 6 targets? Why is DK Metcalf getting 5 or 6 targets? Get the ball to your guy. Jameis Winston, not a perfect quarterback at all, but he gets the ball to his guys, and Jerry Jeudy's one of those guys. And so Jeudy, yes, he absolutely needs to be taken very seriously in the fantasy space, not because he went for 9, 235, and 1 last night, but because he's catching 5 or 6 or 7 passes for 80, 75, 85, 95 yards every week. There's so much volume in this passing attack that he's basically a 14-point-a-week guy in the PPR setup right now. If he doesn't score, that's a pretty high floor for a non-elite player. I mean, not for not the Justin Jeffersons or AJ Browns of the world. Pretty damn good score for Jerry Jeudy, and he absolutely can be taken seriously, though, again, difficult matchup coming up here in Week 14. The next guy to talk about is Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, 8 catches for 111 yards. I think he has 6 catches in 4 of his last 6 games. There's been a couple of games in there where he hasn't done anything, and that's kind of the nature of his game. He is more of the underneath guy. He's not a guy that's stretching the field vertically. It's not a big touchdown threat. But again, 8 catches for 111 yards. Actually had 1 more target last night than Jerry Jeudy did. Now, I know Jerry Jeudy has been added, and I think with the majority of leagues out there, I didn't look the numbers up this morning. I'm always stunned, by the way, when I go to the websites and I look at ESPN or Yahoo or CBS, and these guys are owned 62%, 59%. It's like, wow. I'm assuming that Jerry Jeudy has been added. I don't know if Elijah Moore has. And we'll talk to Armando Marsal here in about 20 minutes. He's one of the guys I want to ask Armando about Elijah Moore because, again, he's not the 20-point upside play of Jeudy, but he's catching 4, 5, 6 passes every game for 50, 60 yards. He's a 10-point-a-week PPR guy. And a lot of people love playing Demario Douglas, right? Elijah Moore is certainly in that mix right now. The next guy to talk about with the Browns is David Njoku. David Njoku, and I see the question here, just popped up. Great timing here, by the way. Talking about tight ends. And we'll get to your comments. If you're watching live, by the way, on youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. If you're watching and listening live at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. In both of those spots, you can leave comments and questions, and we'll address those throughout the show. You can also watch the show live on Twitter X at Fantasy Guru site. Always type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network. Find our shows there. You can always go to fantasyguru.com, click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page to find this and all the other shows that we have on the network. You can always do that. David Njoku saw an absolutely insane, absurd, out of this world 17 targets last night. That's never going to happen again the rest of his career. Okay. He had 9 catches last night, 52 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He is incredibly athletic. He can stretch the field with his speed. Jameis Winston will throw him the football like we saw him. Pummeled him with footballs last night. That is now 2 of 3 games for Njoku with 9 receptions. He's caught 5 balls, like all but 1 game, like last 7 or 8 games or whatever it is. And I had this discussion in my Elite Listener League over on the Sleeper app. I had Njoku. It's like, I don't need Taysom Hill. I got David Njoku. Another huge effort for David Njoku last night. He is a top 10 tight end every week the rest of the way. He's been a top 10 tight end every week, regardless. The question really becomes, is he a top 5 tight end? And I think it's a legitimate question to be asked again. Week 14 against the Steelers. But playoff time, let's look at the playoff schedule real quick here for Cleveland. The playoff schedule is Kansas City, tough matchup. Cincinnati, about the easiest matchup in the world. And then Miami, I'm not afraid of. So the next 2 weeks, the Browns have it rough. They're at Pittsburgh this week. Next week, they face Kansas City. Those are not good matchups. Kansas City and Miami, let's go. And if you happen to play Week 18, they're going to Baltimore, which isn't easy, but that final week against Baltimore can't stop anybody against the pass. So David Njoku is looking pretty good, minus this week and next. So 3 of the last 5 weeks, David Njoku is looking good. Regardless, you're still starting David Njoku as a tight end 1, even in these next tough matchups coming on. There's volume there. There's production there. He just it, like I've said all along. Next up, let's talk about backfield real quickly here before we move on to the Broncos and speak about a backfield. Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford both had 9 carries last night, so they evened each other out. Ford caught 1 pass. Chubb caught 2 passes. They were almost exactly the same in terms of touches. Chubb scored the touchdown as a pass catcher. He wasn't covered, didn't do anything, leaked out into the flat, caught a pass wide open. Okay, got in the end zone. Nick Chubb ain't it. And we've said this a lot, and we've all rooted for Nick Chubb and all that, but he's just not Nick Chubb, which is totally understandable given his catastrophic knee injury. Jerome Ford played twice as many snaps as Chubb did last night. Ford is going to be the 2-minute drill back. He's going to be the 3rd down back. And yesterday he was just the back. I mean, and we've said it all along with Chubb. Chubb is somebody that's like a desperation start. He had a couple of touchdowns a couple of weeks ago. People got excited. I think it was still 20 carries for 59 yards. Didn't do anything. He is in that zone of he's just a guy. And with the game flow Ford can do what he did last night, which is dominate the snap count depending upon how the game flow goes. You don't figure that to be the case against the Steelers, right? You don't figure the Steelers to score 58 points or anything. They did have a huge game last week. You don't figure the Chiefs necessarily are going to score 35 points. They seem to often score 22. Something to think about when you're talking. Ford is really a tough start in any format. But as Jeff Mann said multiple times the last couple of days, if you're desperate, if you're looking for that pivot, maybe you just go with Ford. He did something last night and did a lot in terms of the snap count. Let's go to the other side of things for the Broncos. And I'll just say this, okay? No. What am I talking about? Broncos backfield. Sean Payton's got this team 8-5. They're rolling toward the playoffs. Good for them. Bo Nix, let's all get excited. Mims is making some big plays. Courtland Sutton is just dynamic. Backfield, no. And before you say, well, Ray, Jaleel McLaughlin got 14 carries last night, I'm going to tell you this. I don't give a flip. I don't think you should give a flip either, to be fair. The last 3 weeks, guess who leads this team in touches? Javonte Williams. Who had the rushing touchdown last night? Javonte Williams. Who played the most third downs last night in the backfield for the Broncos? Javonte Williams. Who had the most goal line touch snaps last night for the Broncos backfield? Javonte Williams. How many touches did Javonte Williams have last night? 5. So he led the backfield in snaps. Javonte Williams led the team last night in snaps, led the team in routes run, led the team in 2-minute drill snaps, third down snaps, and goal line snaps. And he had 5 touches. Jaleel McLaughlin had the 14 carries for 84 yards, no longer catches passes. He's never involved as a pass catcher. It's just not part of his game. Don't forget that Michael flippin' Burton had a 1-yard touchdown run last night. Wasn't Estimate that got the ball at the 1. Wasn't McLaughlin that got the ball at the 1. Wasn't Javonte Williams who got the ball at the 1. It was Michael Burton. No, we're just out. Too much of this Sean Payton nonsense. Can't sell on a running back. I'm not even going to sit here and tell anybody, well, Jaleel McLaughlin's the number 1 guy now. We thought 4 weeks ago that it was Estimate when he had his 14 touches in that game. Remember he had the 14 carries? What happened the next week? Are you really certain that the 14 touches that Jaleel McLaughlin had last night mean he's going to get? No. And again, Javonte Williams is the guy who led the team in routes, in snaps, in goal line touches, in snaps, in third down snap. No, we're just out on this backfield. Just stay away. Courtland Sutton, another huge game, 6 catches for 102 yards. He's gone like 675 in like 6 or 7 straight games. He's doing Jerry Jeudy thing to a little bit higher degree. Sutton, I know, had a slow start to the season. I know we answered tons of Courtland Sutton questions in the Discord at fantasyguru.com. Tons. Everyone wanted to drop Courtland Sutton. Hopefully you didn't. Because he has been a banger in the second half of the season, and he legitimately is just scoring 14, 15 points every week. And then he gets in the end zone, and there's your 20 spot. Another strong effort for Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims had the huge 93-yard touchdown. He is a fast dude. 3 catches on 4 targets, though. There's no volume here. There's never been volume here. He's generally settling into the 2-catch, 40 to 50-yard zone. That's kind of where he's been the last couple of weeks before that huge gainer last night, that 93-yarder from Bo Nix. Mims is in that zone of the Xavier Worthy type of players, right? It's that we're not necessarily seeing a big volume. They're not necessarily a real part of the offense, but we're going to scheme a couple of plays to this guy, and let's see what happens. Normally, it's 2 catches for 40 yards for Mims. Last night, it was 3 for 105. So don't go chasing the points with Marvin Mims. Again, if you're desperate, I mean, we understand this. I was going to say if you're desperate in week 14 and you want to go Marvin Mims, well, you can't because Denver's on the bye. But he's the kind of guy, Marvin Mims, that you could go for this week because teams are on the bye. He's just obviously not the option this week. No volume for him in this offense. There's no floor with him. There is upside, but it's random upside, just like the MVS, Nick Westbrook-Akines of the world. Tough to live or die with these guys on a consistent basis. Finally, Devaughn Vele, who had come into this game averaging about 9 PPR points the previous 3 games. He caught 4, and 6 passes the previous 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. Last night, only had 4 targets, caught 1 of them for 16 yards. So Vele was a disappointment last night. You look at this. Franklin had 5 targets. Mims had 4. So it wasn't like the volume went anywhere else. They just spread it around a little bit more. By the way, look at this cool mug I have. It's a really cool mug for those of you watching. Bones Coffee Shark Bite. I'm a shark guy. You got the little skeleton there riding the shark. There we go. That's nice and clear. Pretty cool mug. I'm in a ceramics class, by the way. I did not make this mug, though I'm using glazes like this in a Saturday night ceramics class with my lady. Maybe I'll bring on some of those horrible... The wheel is not easy. For those people that haven't done ceramics, it looks like fun, and it's all, and you see the pros, and they just go, whoop, and here's a bowl, or whoop, here's a mug. It's not that easy. I'm doing okay. But, anyway, Vele, still the last guy, wide receiver 6 on your team kind of thing. Last night, I think, is more of a one-off than a trend that we're going to see going forward. I would anticipate him returning to the 4-catch, 40-yard kind of guy. Does that do anything for you? Probably not in the fantasy space. So that's a review of the game. Broncos go to 8-5. The Browns fall to 3-9. All right, let's talk some bigger picture things. Again, as I noted, you probably have all not only heard this, but thought about how you're going to handle it. But because we haven't talked about it here directly on the show, let's talk about it. We had Christian McCaffrey placed upon the injured list with the knee issue. We all knew that was coming. We talked about that yesterday. Jordan Mason, high ankle sprain, to the injured list. Oof. Now, I can't remember if we talked about, I'm being honest here, I can't remember if we talked about this on the show yesterday or if I was just in Discord or it was both. But I said, look, Jordan Mason, can he handle the workload? Like, we know the production, but can he handle the workload? Well, the answer is no, because he's on the injured list. Theoretically, he could return for Week 18. No one plays Week 18. It doesn't matter. So it's Isaac Guerendo. Now, I have said since June that I thought Isaac Guerendo could be a league winner this season. Now, everyone kind of plants a flag on some random player. Everyone kind of says that about somebody in June. And I was, to be clear about this, always an Isaac Guerendo guy from the start. Okay? I said all along he's a league winner. If CMC goes down, Isaac Guerendo, Isaac Guerendo, Isaac Guerendo. We're going to get that opportunity to see it now because it's Isaac Guerendo's show because Mason and CMC are both out. Now, flip side, to be fair, I kept saying to people, look, if you want to get Mason for right now, you can pick up Mason, but I'm still a Guerendo guy long term. So I was wrong on that because Guerendo was the guy for the first 7 weeks of the season that led the backfield when Mason was out. So this is not a full win for me because, again, I was a Guerendo over Mason guy at the start of the year. If we're in the playoffs now, we're in the playoff hunt, we're pushing, we're there. Is it more important to have had Mason in week 3 or to have Guerendo now? That's a decision everyone can make. But the bottom line is Guerendo is now going to be the lead back of the Niners. Now, the Niners are seemingly shutting a player down on a daily basis. Defensive players, offensive players, they're just a mess right now. Brock Purdy, his shoulder, is it right? Are they going to have to shut him down? Trent Williams, he didn't play last week. He's dealing with some health issues as well as some personal issues away from the field. The Hall of Famer, potential future Hall of Famer, I should say. I don't know if his season's over. That would be a huge loss on the offensive line if the left tackle's gone. So we're looking at the Niners theoretically losing their best offensive player in Christian McCaffrey, theoretically losing their second best offensive player in Trent Williams, theoretically losing their third best offensive player, Brock Purdy. It could be tough for Guerendo. So I will talk to Armando Marcel here in a couple of minutes about Guerendo. I'm in on Guerendo. I think that at this point of the season, if you need help in the backfield, we're like spending 90% of what we got left of our budget. It depends if you can add players for $0 or not. Some leagues you have to spend money to add a player. Like you can't, there's no open waiver wire. You're not allowed to add players for $0 if you have fab. If that's the case, you've got to keep money, right? Even if it's not the case, even if you can add guys for $0, I don't really necessarily want to zero out my budget, right? But it depends. If you have $100 to spend and you're down to $38, if you need a guy, you go. We're aggressively pursuing Isaac Guerendo. He can be a league winner down the stretch for the San Francisco Niners and for you. Okay, next up, let's talk about the situation with Dallas Goedert. He's got a knee issue. Jeff McClain reported yesterday, we knew that Goedert had a knee issue and he was likely to miss a little bit of time. Candidate for short-term IR is what we're hearing now. Oof. So it could be a multi-week absence for Dallas Goedert. As we talked about earlier this week with the Eagles when we discussed the situation with Devonta Smith, they cannot get Smith, Goedert, and A.J. Brown on the field at the same time. They can't do it. And they're 10-2. Continue to expect a lot of Barkley and a lot of Hurts on the ground if Dallas Goedert does indeed miss time moving forward. Speaking of the tight end position, Theo Johnson, Theo Johnson's he's kind of a nobody for most of you. If you're in a 10-team league, you probably never even looked at Theo Johnson. But if you're in a deeper league or you're in a tight end premium league, Theo Johnson was catching 3-4 passes a week, 40, 50 yards. Again, nothing exciting, but really not appreciably different than the Will Dissleys of the world. He has a foot injury, though, does Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson is therefore on the IR. He could return in week 18. It won't matter in the fantasy space. So his rookie season is, for all intents and purposes, over. The question becomes, Greg Dulcich was added this team. I think I even joked with was it Russell Clay last week on Friday about Dulcich. Dulcich, I mean, Dan Ballinger's there too, but whether it's Daniel Jones, whether it's DeVito, whether it's Drew Lock, the offense is throwing passes to the tight end position. So Greg Dulcich, who at one period of time was an ascending player who, was looked at a guy who catch 3 or 4 passes a week, he's going to likely fall into that role now that Theo Johnson is out. Does this mean you go and add Greg Dulcich and expect him to go 550 the rest of the way? No. This is just a put him on your watch list kind of scenario because Dulcich is somebody who no one's talking about, who could end up being in that mix to be wide receiver 8 to 15, which all these other guys, right, each week. And it will depend. He's getting 7-8 points. It'll depend on that touchdown if it's a win or not. Dulcich, somebody to put on the watch list. Ladd McConkey, who's obviously starting for people, had another strong game last week. Look, Ladd McConkey, I've said this and we've joked about it. He looks like he's 14 years old. And, I'm not a big dude. I'm about 6'4", about 190 pounds. Like, these guys standing next to me are going to look tiny. Ladd McConkey can't stay healthy. He's producing big-time numbers. He's getting huge target shares. He's the only reliable pass catcher for the Chargers. He's got a knee issue he's dealing with. He's got a shoulder issue he's dealing with. He's working through a couple of things. Jim Harbaugh said they're going to evaluate him all week long. Yeah. Make sure if you've got Ladd McConkey that you've got options, because it's getting harder and harder to envision a scenario where McConkey makes it through the rest of the season and able to play every week, because he just physically seems like he's getting beat up to the point where he's wearing down. Not seeing it in the production, of course. The production's been great, but just something to file away there. Some concerns physically with Ladd McConkey. A couple of scenarios real quickly before we visit with Armando Marcel. First of all, Romeo Doubs coming back from his head injury. The head coach of the Packers, Matt LaFleur, still says we're not sure if he's going to play this week. We'll see. He's still in the protocol. There is still time for him to be activated to play Thursday against the Lions, but we will see. His return obviously just muddles a muddled situation with the Packers receiving core. We know that. Jordan Love has regressed from last season. He's even regressed from the start of this season. So it's a spotty scenario through the air for this team, given all the options they have. Romeo Doubs just really makes it more confusing, even though he tends to be the number one wide receiver on this team for what that is worth, and it's not worth a hell of a lot. Trevor Lawrence is still in the concussion protocol. I mean, we have to face facts, and the facts are that it's very likely that Trevor Lawrence is done for 2025. Maybe he comes back. 2024, excuse me. Maybe he comes back, but there's just, what's the incentive? The team sucks. They're going nowhere. Players are hurt all over the offensive side of things. His left shoulder's messed up. They're still talking about potentially having surgery on it. He just had his brain scrambled. Maybe he gets back out there, but we're likely to see Mac Jones, I think, short-term and probably for the rest of the season. And then finally, the linebacker that hit him, Azeez Al-Shaair, has been suspended 3 games. I'll say this. Justin Fields slides and gets hit all the time in the head, and they don't even call penalties. Trevor Lawrence slides and gets hit in the head. Now, again, he was concussed, and it was a horrible, horrible hit by Al-Shaair. 3-game suspension. So, huge loss for the Texans defense. He's ranked as one of the top 20 linebackers, I think, in football. He's on my IDP Dynasty League team. So his loss weakens the defense of the Texans. Something to think about. He'll be eligible to return in Week 17 when they face the Ravens. Out 3 games for the hit to Trevor Lawrence. Is what it is. So we'll move on from that. All right, it's a Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we talk to our man Armando Marcel. Armando, you can find him at fantasyguru.com in the Discord all the time. You can find him writing about snap counts and red zone work. You can find his DFS articles over there breaking down the weekly matchup. You can find him on Tuesday nights on the live stream at fantasyguru.com. By the way, you can get all this stuff if you click the subscribe tab in the top right corner. Remember, $65 for the rest of the season for all of football DFS, seasonal, and wagering, which means all of the work of Armando Marsal, including his podcast, The Mind of Marsal, which you can find at the website. Click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. Here he is. We're welcoming him in on Tuesday. Armando Marsal at fantasyguru.com. How you doing, Armando?
I'm doing good, Ray. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Better than Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
Have you ever had a concussion? I've never had a concussion. Have you?
Yes, I actually. It was a minor one due to a car accident. Yes, I went in and got checked up, and apparently I suffered a mild concussion. I didn't get any, side effects or anything. They just told me so. Just a little headache.
Okay. Yeah,
It was also because I got hit in the head. So.
Well, that's yeah. I was never. I've told the story a lot. My dad was a football player, but he never pushed me to play football. So I played basketball and baseball, and I got hit. Broke fingers and tore ligament. I've done all that. I never had my head hit. Whenever I fell, I always got my arm out, so I never hit my head on the ground. I didn't box or play football, so I just have no experience with it. But like you say, some guys have a concussion and they're fine 2 days later. Other guys have concussions and they're still dealing with it 10 years down the road. We've sloughed it off for a long time, but it's a brain injury. I'm glad you're okay. It's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah. I mean, and I was listening to you talk about Trevor Lawrence, and after watching that hit, right? Like I think there's really no need to rush him back this season. There's nothing to play for here. Maybe he ends up playing again, but if I'm the Jaguars and if they're really, planning on him being the future of this franchise, shut him down for the year, let him get healthy. You're not playing for anything, and kind of do this all over again in 2025. But yeah, that was a massive hit, man. It sucked watching that, and then the after effects of that late hit and all that stuff. You don't want to see that in football, man.
Well, I said it yesterday, and again, it was a dirty hit, and he deserves a suspension. But as I said yesterday on the show, it's like these guys are making decisions. If Al-Shaair doesn't go to hit him, if he thinks in his mind Trevor Lawrence is going down and he lets up for that split second, and Trevor Lawrence sees that split second let up, he jukes him and he's running 18 yards down the field, right? Like it's such a fine line. Like on slow-mo replay, he lifts his arm and hits it. Looks terrible, right? But it's such a quick thing. I heard Jeff Manns on the Elite Sports Show yesterday say that he thinks that the NFL has gone too far protecting quarterbacks. And what do you think? Because again, it was a dirty hit. I get it, but it was made in the split second. If the quarterback's not allowed to slide and not get hit, it's not an issue. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think given the current way the NFL is structured as far as rules are concerned, I do think it leaves for a lot of situations. I don't think this one was. I think this one, like, he led with the elbow. So for me, I don't know. He led with the elbows. Felt a little bit dirty, and I think he has a history, and I think that because of that kind of adds to this. But I do think it leads for a lot of questionable hits. I've seen a lot of penalties get called for roughing the passer or late hit on the quarterback, where it's just like he's just making a tackle, and those are the instances like when the linebacker or a defensive end or just the defensive tackle, anyway, they're coming in like you said, full throttle. They hug the quarterback. A 300-pound man cannot stop going full throttle and just let him
in
go.
One step. Yeah.
Like you cannot do that. Like I think there has to be some realistic expectations as to some of these rules, and I do think it leaves for a lot of questionable calls. And that part I do agree. I do think that they've kind of made it a little bit. I don't want to say soft, but like just too many rules protecting that quarterback. They're out there the same as everyone else. I'm not for late hits. I'm not for what we saw this weekend against Trevor Lawrence. But sometimes there's these players are sacking a quarterback and it's late hit. And it's just like he had his arm around. He was hugging him. Like there was no ill intention there. And you just hate to see it.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com joins us every Tuesday. Let's get into the waiver wire a little bit, Armando. Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, both even. Hell. Let's chase some points. Huge efforts for both of these guys. There are 6 teams on bye this week. Do we chase the points here? I mean, again, you look at the teams that are on bye, and it's like, okay, we're without Anthony Richardson, we're without Drake May, without Bo Nix, Jay Daniels, okay, Lamar Jackson, okay. CJ Stroud. So it's like 3 of these 6 teams, okay, he's got a weekly guy. The other 3 are kind of backups anyway. Russell Wilson, are we doing anything with that?
I'm okay with adding Russell Wilson if you're dealing with a bye week issue or something like that. I'm not going to add him and start him over a Patrick Mahomes. We get a lot of these questions. Oh, are you going to start Russell Wilson over Patrick Mahomes or, get Jared Goff or someone like that? Like, if I have a starter that I've been relying on this, he's not on bye, I'm not going to just automatically plug and play Russell Wilson over him. I do think if you're preparing for a postseason run and you have been kind of, dealing with volatility at the position. Maybe you do have a quarterback who's been somewhat volatile and you've been counting on. Russell Wilson has a pretty good end of the season schedule. I think he plays the Ravens in week 16. That is in itself could be a game where they put up points, like things like that if you're preparing for something like that. But if you have a quarterback like Josh Allen, or if you have a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, or you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, where you're counting on, you're just playing him every week, there's no need to go out there and add Russell Wilson just to have a second quarterback. So if I'm choosing between him or Jameis Winston, I would probably say Winston. I just understand the volatility that it comes with him, right? Like we saw it yesterday. He made some really bad, decisions that, led to pick sixes. Right. But again, he also threw for over 400 yards and multiple touchdown passes. That's the kind of fun you're going to get with Jameis Winston. And I think that's here to stay. I don't think they're going to slow it down in the passing game. It's been working. They look better. This offense, this team has looked better with him under center. Like, it's just a different team and a different identity. And I don't think that's going anywhere. So I know that this team may not have a ton to play for, but they're playing for their coach. You saw it yesterday. They don't give up. They're in these games. And as much shit as Winston gets, he's a fun guy to watch, and he's a good guy in the locker room. If you watch a lot of his post-game and pre-game speeches, and I mean, I'm a huge fan, so I'm rooting for him. So I think you could definitely add him, and I think he's in a conversation for a top 12 quarterback the rest of the way. Like, I think you could make that conversation.
Sean H asks, why couldn't Watson produce numbers close to this with these weapons? Is Watson just washed? Is that what we're coming down to?
I think with him is he has all the talent in the world, but mentally he's not there anymore. And I think he went through so much. And I think that's something that's not talked about. I just think that he was off the field. He dealt with so much, and that has transitioned and it has leaked into his, on the field performance. So I don't want to say he's washed, but he looks washed. Like, he looks like he's just, not there. And I think it's more of a mental than a physical thing with him.
Tony T actually asked another question too about the Browns, since we're talking about him. How do you see Jeudy's target share changing when Tillman returns? I mean, it's really easy to get excited about Jeudy when you see 13 targets last night, but 58 pass attempts, right? Jeudy was producing, 6 catches for 70 yards a week with Tillman on the field. I think that we've got a pyramid scenario going, right? You and I have talked about this before. There's like 4 guys in this team that catch passes, and that's it. There's nobody else when it's Tillman, Moore, Jeudy, and Njoku. Basically 20% each guy, kind of. Is it going back to that when Tillman's out there?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Winston, who we can say 40-plus passes per game. You're looking at a 20 to 22% target share for Jeudy, Tillman. I would probably go 18 to 20% with, more, and you're going to see Njoku right at that 20%. So there's going to be weeks where Tillman will get a couple more than Jeudy. There's going to be weeks where Moore will get a couple more than these guys. And I think we're going to see that. Moore is the one that I would view as the more volatile one here of the bunch. I do think that there's going to be more concentration when it comes to Jeudy and Tillman. We do know that Winston likes to take those shots downfield. That's where you're going to see Tillman and Jeudy do a lot of their work. So I think they're all going to be reliable in PPR formats. I think you're going to get a floor of 7 to 8 targets for each of these guys. Most weeks, there could be some weeks where 5 or 6 targets are there, but I think most weeks for especially Tillman, Jeudy, I think 7, 8 targets is a floor for them here moving forward.
Armando Marsala, fantasyguru.com. The shock heard around the world, right, was Christian McCaffrey getting hurt on the weekend. All right, let's go, Mr. Mason. Oh, so much for that. Mason's hurt too. Like, oh boy. So it's Isaac Guerendo's city right now. And the question that's come up in Discord, the one you've answered before, the one that I gave my thoughts, 15 minutes ago here on this show, wanted you to give your thoughts to the audience here too. Is it Isaac Guerendo or bust? Are we spending all of our fab left? Is it to the moon with Guerendo? Do you have concerns about the offense with Trent Williams and Brock Purdy. Like, talk us through the Guerendo situation, Armando.
So I just went in my home league, and if hopefully none of my league members are watching this right now, but I did put all of the rest of my fab. It's not a lot. I threw a lot of that on Winston. It's a super flex league. But I threw the rest of my fab budget there on Isaac Guerendo. I think he's going to become that every week starter. I think he's going to be someone that is going to get plenty of opportunities. Is there some concerns with this team? Absolutely. But I think when you look at a running back in the Shanahan system, I think he's going to flourish. And maybe he's not going to give you the 30-point ceiling or the 35-point ceiling, given some of the issues here with this offense. But I do think you're going to get plenty of production and opportunities here on a week-to-week basis. So for me, it's all really relative to your roster, right? Like, if you're in a team that you're not going to start him, maybe you don't have to spend all of your fab. But if you have Derrick Henry, if you have Brian Robinson Jr., and some of these guys are on bye, right? Who else is on bye this week? You mentioned so if you have Joe Mixon, if you have Jonathan Taylor, like if you have one or two of these guys, I'm going out there right now. I'm spending everything I have in Guerendo. I do expect him to see the majority of the opportunities here. I do expect him to become the featured back of this backfield. And even when they weren't playing their best, there was production out of the backfield here. So, I think he's someone that you should be prioritizing. I think he's going to be the number one ad, pretty much across all leagues here. So to answer this question, all of it or minimum 50. And if you have the number one waiver priority, use it on Guerendo. That's how I view him this week.
All right, so we had Chris McCaffrey as the number one running back, according to everyone, right? He got hurt. Mason went out there and was a top 10 running back the first 7 weeks of the season until he got hurt. So now it's Guerendo City, right? Okay. What about David's question here? David asked the question, if I get Guerendo, would you also pick up Patrick Taylor? Because, again, we want to cuff our guys, and it's not the worst idea I've ever heard here.
I wouldn't be making a play at both of them. And the good thing about Taylor is that not many people are going to be thinking that way.
No one even mentioned his name. I haven't even heard his name mentioned.
Oh, no, he's someone you could get for super. Like, you're going to be able to get him for like 5%, 6%. Like, and that's being aggressive, I think. But yes, I would get Guerendo, and I would also add Taylor if you have the ability to do so. So if you want to go 99%, there's the most important thing. Look through every single, and I know this is tedious, but look through every single one of your fantasy members' budget. Look what they have available. If you have, let's just say you haven't used fab all season, right? And you've been saving your fab, and you're the only one, just max out that number. Like if the next best team has, let's just say $90, go 91. And then you still have fab left. You're guaranteed that player, and you could use, a couple dollars here on Taylor. That's something to consider here. I like giving that advice because not everyone at this point of the season has 100% fab.
Armando Masala, fantasyguru.com. What about another running back who, has kind of slid under the radar? He's not impressive statistically, but certainly looked like he took over the backfield for his team last week. Sincere McCormick. Zamir White and Alexander Madison, I guess, don't play football anymore. It's really weird. It's been weeks now without them out. There's a chance they're both active this week, and McCormick, goes back to being inactive. Like, that's out here. But is McCormick somebody we should be paying any attention to?
This is only for really deep leagues, right? Like where the waiver wires don't have much and you're hurting at the position or you have an extra spot available. I don't want to add him to play him. We don't know what's going to happen with Madison. You mentioned it there. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with White. So it's just not a situation I want to be overly invested in. I'd rather go and add someone like a Kimani Vidal or, someone like we know a little bit more as far as their roles are concerned. But very deep leagues, Ray, I'm not interested. I don't want to chase anything with McCormick.
Breece Hall has got a knee issue. How bad is it? He played all the snaps last week. He was on the field the whole time. He's not utilizing the passing attack because Aaron Rodgers is falling off a cliff in front of all our faces here. Braylon Allen, somebody? Like, if he's out there, yes, no.
I view him as an elite handcuff. Like, that's what I'm viewing him as, an elite handcuff, not someone I want to plug and play, not someone I want to add to start. Like you mentioned, Hall was still on the field. I think he played like in the 60 range of snaps, and he's usually in the 70 range of snaps. So he did see less, but again, he's dinged up. Like, this is a team that, like you said, just doesn't look like they're clicking here. I do think Allen will be involved. I do think he'll have opportunities, but I don't think that he's going to be like his role is going to be consistent enough where you can depend on him, in your starting lineups. Well, now I will say this: if Hall goes down, that changes everything. Allen becomes a potential every week starter for a lot of fantasy managers, and these are the kind of players that even if you're not utilizing them, you really want on your bench at this point in the season.
Armando, let's go to the wide receiver position now. We talked about Adam Thielen on the show literally weeks ago. We wrote about him at fantasyguru.com as an edition literally weeks ago. He came back, went 3 catches for 37 yards, didn't do anything. Some people that added him probably dropped him. Exploded over the weekend, 90-plus yards, a touchdown. Should have had a second touchdown. I don't know what the hell that was about. I don't know what that – I should have had 2 touchdowns. Anyway, all of a sudden now Adam Thielen's on everyone's – I saw all the waiver wire articles. He's the number 1 pick. Well, we told you to pick him up 2 weeks ago. But if Adam Thielen is still out there, we got to get him, right? But are you paying the price? Because now the price is going to be a lot of that fab budget if you've got it left.
I mean, really dependent on what you're at with your roster, right? I do think he's an ad. We talked about it last week. Like his first game back, it wasn't wow, but it was because they were easing him in. Now it's back. We know that there's confidence there. Like, and Bryce Young trusts Adam Thielen. That's the big thing. It's a young quarterback trusting his slot receiver there. I think that those targets are here to stay. I think those opportunities are here to stay. I'm going to go out there. I think you could view him as a flex play in PPR settings moving forward, right? I think this role is going to be consistent. We saw it early on last year where they had a lot of chemistry and he posted some big numbers. This is a team that's going to be chasing points often. And so long as he's continuing to be on that field and healthy and seeing these opportunities, I think you can trust him here each and every week. So as far as how much you want to spend on him, it's truly dependent on where you're at the receiver position. If you're loaded and he's going to be your 5th option, you don't have to go overboard. If you're hurting at the wide receiver position and you've been kind of moving pieces around at that wide receiver 3 spot or that flex spot in the PPR setting, you might want to be a little bit more aggressive. I think roster context will really determine how much and how aggressive you want to be with someone like Adam Thielen.
It seems like it was 6 months ago, but the last time Brandon Cooks played, he actually scored a touchdown. It was on Thanksgiving. It just seems like forever ago. Not a lot of volume there. The offense is what it is, but CeeDee Lamb's all kinds of beat up. Is Brandon Cooks somebody that's not on anyone's priority list in terms of a high-level ad, but someone that you'd still be interested in adding?
Yes, 100%. I think he's someone that I definitely want to add. I mean, you mentioned it. Like, it wasn't a huge game by any means, but they get that touchdown. I think he had 7 targets in that contest. So someone that we know can produce in this offense, a Dallas team that at the end of the day, I think they're going to be chasing points. Yes, Cooper Rush, yeah. But you know what? Like you mentioned that he's getting it done, right? So CeeDee Lamb is dinged up. And this is one of those situations, right, where if they lose a couple games and CeeDee Lamb is not 100%, like do they end up shutting him down? And if so, what does that, how many opportunities is Cook's going to get now at that point? I don't think you need to start him, but I definitely think he's a good stash, someone to have on your bench, and maybe a bye-week replacement this week. If I think they play the Bengals, right? Good matchup there on Monday night. We just saw the Bengals. We just saw the Bengals get shredded. This is a defense that just looks horrendous. So Cooks is in a good spot. It could potentially be a plug-and-play for you this week with so many teams on bye.
What about Parker Washington? He was a thing like a month ago. Christian Kirk gets hurt. Gabe Davis is beat up. No, he didn't do anything. He's moved on from. All of a sudden explodes last week. Any staying power for Parker Washington?
I feel like that's, for me, it feels like it's chasing. And then add the fact that it's going to be Mac Jones under center. I know he did okay here against the Texans, but I'm not buying that. Outside of like super deep leagues, he's probably not someone I'm going to be going out of my way to go and rush and get off waivers.
Every week we have you on, and it seems like I ask you about NWI. Every week. And every week we say, come on, and then he scores another touchdown. Okay. What about MVS? Let's go with the initials game. MVS, who is basically now Nick Westbrook-Akini as well. He's getting 3 targets a week. He's catching 2 passes a week. He's getting a touchdown a week. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, thoughts? He
has 2 catches, 3 catches, 1 catch in his last 4 games. He has 4 touchdowns. I mean, I can't stomach that, Ray. Look, if you take away this touchdown this weekend, he has 5 fantasy points. Just understand that MVS is very touchdown dependent. I do want to say about NWI. So he's trending actually in the right direction as far from a volume perspective. Yep. That's something that you should be paying attention to, because we talk a lot about that here. And he's generally someone that, we're saying, oh, touchdown. But he's getting more opportunities now than he was before. There's some pretty good games here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's either this week or next week that they play the Jaguars, right? So a good matchup here if it is this week. But I know they have the Jaguars at least once or twice left in their season, right? And if you need a streaming option, if this volume continues to trend in the direction, I think he's going to give us a safer floor and not be as touchdown dependent. So that's one thing I want to say about NWI. I don't feel that way about MVS. I do think he's still touchdown dependent. And again, it's just a matter of, do you want that kind of volatility with someone like MVS?
Yeah, NWI had 8 targets this week, I think, right? Like a huge target volume.
Yes, he had 7 or 8 targets. He was more involved than usual. And then you're talking about MVS. He has 3, 4, 3, 1 target. Like we're chasing touchdowns still with him.
By the way, that schedule for the Titans is glorious, as Armando said. It's Jacksonville this week. It's our Bengals friends in Week 15. In Week 16, it's the Colts, and then in Week 17, it's the Jaguars again.
I mean,
so you're line it up, right?
Check. Like that, he might be someone that you close out the rest of the season with. As if that volume continues, I'm telling you, you're going to be able to flex him. I think on a week-to-week basis.
I wanted to ask you about a couple of tight ends before we moved on to some of the comments here in the chat room, Armando. Pat Freiermuth, who's been 2 or 3 catches for 30 yards, had a big game last time out with Russell Wilson. Juwan Johnson, who's 3 catches for 30 yards, but now Taysom Hill is out of the way. Pat Freiermuth and Juwan Johnson. Talk to us about both those guys, and if you had to choose one of the two, do you have a preference?
Yeah, if I have to choose one of the two, it'll be Pat Freiermuth. I liked him a lot last week. It was a good matchup. I said this on the Sunday live stream with Chris Rose, and my concern with Freiermuth is he hasn't been getting the opportunities. He had 4 targets, the week before this one, but then he had 7 targets this week. The matchup was good. The game environment was good. So I don't know if he's going to get 7 targets on a week-to-week basis. But I do think that we've seen now 11 targets in the last game, a little bit more involved, some production out of him with over 50 receiving yards. He's someone that has that kind of potential and a red zone threat as well here for the Steelers. So I would lean with him. I think he's a good ad if you're looking for a tight end. But I'm okay with Juwan Johnson. I think we're going to see more opportunities for him moving forward with Hill, with Hill's injury. So I do think that you're going to see anywhere between 4 and 6 targets for Juwan Johnson. That's not something you can say about a lot of tight ends right now that you're streaming. Do I think that he's going to give us a week-to-week safe floor? No, I don't think so. I think this is probably going to mean more opportunities in the passing game for Kamara as well, and I think we'll see them spread the ball. But I definitely think that Juwan Johnson's a streaming option for those in need, right? Like for those who are dealing with injuries, or for those who, we also saw Dallas Goedert got hurt this weekend. There's some bye weeks here. If you've been playing Mark Andrews, he's on bye this week. If you've been streaming, players like that. So, I definitely think you can add him here. And Will Disley, he's probably owned in a lot of leagues, but if he's dropped because he hasn't had a good game, add him. Like I think that production, that opportunity is still going to be here. I would add him. I just want to say that because I feel like a lot of people might cut someone like a Disley, and if they do, I think he's someone that you go add this week. A good matchup there for them.
Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. He's with us every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern time. He mentioned the live stream. He does a live stream almost every Tuesday. He's on the live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time, talking the seasonal game. And then on Sundays, you do the live stream for the DFS game. What time is that, Armando?
Yeah, Sunday mornings is 11 a.m. Eastern. It's usually Chris Rose and myself. This week, it'll be the great Tyler Beaker and myself will be breaking that one down. And then we're also in Discord there up until 1 p.m. answering all questions. I know I see you in there as well. Everyone's in their Ted's in the DFS room. We got everyone hanging in there answering questions. So make sure you check us out every Sunday there.
Yeah, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner to get the live streams, to get the articles, to get the access to Discord. With Armando, to get Armando's podcast, Mind of Marsal. You can also click the Elite Plus tab at the top of the page for that. Let's talk a little bit more. We've got some questions here, Armando. Let's continue our conversation about the tight end position. Evan Ingram or David Njoku the rest of the way? I say the answer to this question is yes. There are a lot of people that have Ingram and Njoku, or have Hawkinson and Njoku. A lot of people have 2 top 6 tight ends. It's the way the season's played out. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. But do you favor Njoku or Ingram if you had to make that call?
I I think they're both going to be viewed as top 10, top 12 tight ends the rest of the way, right? Just simply because of opportunities in their offenses. I prefer the quarterback situation in Cleveland. I think that's pretty clear, but I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. If choosing one, I would, if I have to choose one, it would be Njoku. But if you have both of these on your roster right now, I mean, maybe just hold on to them. Unless you're going to improve your bench by adding someone like a Guerendo or something like that. So yeah.
Kyle also commented here, and I laid into this situation earlier in the show today. Denver's running backs are as faithful as a slot machine. Do you have a favorite? Do you care? I basically said earlier in the show, I don't care. I'm out. Michael Burton had a touchdown. I'm out. Like, I'm just not dealing with that. Do you have a favorite? Do you care anymore at this point?
It'll be on tomorrow's Snap. My full thought process, the tomorrow Snap article, because I don't trust anyone here. Like, to answer your question, I don't trust any of these guys. I don't want to be relying on any of these guys. It's going to continue to be musical chairs there. It's going to be the hot hand. It's very, very clear that that's what they're going to do. And I don't see that changing between now and the end of the season.
Eric I has my absolute favorite question. I think it's the 1,537th time it's been asked to me this year. Talking about backup running backs that we don't have the running back one of. He has Jonathan Brooks and Kamani Vidal right now. He's got his main running backs handcuffed, so he did a good job there. So now we're talking 3 running backs in Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks, Kamani Vidal. Which of those 3, Allen, Brooks, or Vidal, would you let go?
I would rather have Brooks and Allen on my roster, but I don't want to cut Vidal. Like, this is a situation where I'm looking at my wide receivers and I'm saying, all right, who's my wide receiver 5, my wide receiver 6? And maybe I part ways with someone like that because I feel like a receiver is easier to replace off waivers in the running back. And if any of these, like if Gus Edwards were to go down, you're going to have to drop everything you have on Vidal. If, Breece Hall goes down, you have to drop everything you have on Allen. And Brooks is starting to see his role increase a little bit. So we don't know what his role is actually going to be down the stretch. And to me, he's someone that you got to kind of wait and see at this point, especially if you've held him for this long. So if I have to choose one here, the odd man out would be Vidal, but I'd rather be looking at the wide receiver depth and maybe cut some wide receiver depth before I cut anyone like Vidal.
You know what's so interesting? I always say the exact same thing. And the question still keeps coming up over and over again. I don't know how many times you can say don't cut running backs because they're the number one thing to get. That one the one injury that happens from running back takes them from running back 56 to running back 13. Boom. Wide receiver 56 becomes wide receiver 32 if things go well. Like, it's just not – hold those running backs if you can. It's just the way to play it. Sean H. asks the question, he needs more Armando in his life. When does your podcast usually drop?
It's every Thursday. Last week I did 2. Last week there was 2 episodes. There was one before the Thanksgiving slate, and then there was one for Friday. So last week was a little bit different, but it's every Thursday that drops. Usually early afternoon. You'll see it live on the site, and I post a link on Discord, posted on Twitter, and all other social media platforms.
Kyle's on fire this morning. I don't do stardom sit-ems till Wednesday, so I'm not answering this question. Armando might answer this question. Armando says no. So Keenan Allen or DK Metcalf. I think obviously Allen's trending upward. New OC. The OC is now the head coach. They're throwing him the ball. DK Metcalf is floundering. Jeff said on his show yesterday, like, why is this guy always in the blue tent? I think I have DK Metcalf on like all of my teams, Armando. I can't bench DK Metcalf. And I know you've said it before too. Have your thoughts changed?
I mean, I'm not going to bench him myself. I'm going to continue riding this wave. But this is a situation like who else are you starting over these two, right? Like, especially with all these teams on bye, like, because you're talking about wide receiver 2 and Metcalf. Like, that's how I view Metcalf as a wide receiver 2. He's no longer, like, in my eyes, a wide receiver 1 that I'm starting like every week confidently, but he's still a wide receiver 2 in my book. Right. And I'm viewing Allen as a flex wide receiver 3 play, like most weeks, like right. So I have Metcalf ahead of him, but I view both of them as firmly in play.
I think it's AI. It might be Al. I think it's AI.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, there you go. It's not even a real person. It doesn't matter because they can't read my lips. And this is a good question. I skipped over him because the Commanders are on bye this week. If we're looking to pick up a running back, is it Chris Rodriguez or Jeremy McNichols? Rodriguez, the last 2 times he's been given opportunities, look good. And McNichols didn't play much last week behind Brian Robinson. Is it Rodriguez or McNichols if you're looking to add the second piece to Robinson?
I still think it's McNichols. Rodriguez played the majority of the fourth quarter. I think he only played 2 or 3 snaps in the first 3 quarters. Don't quote me on that. I will have that in, but I think it was maybe at most a handful of snaps in the first 3 quarters. And then when the game was out of control is when he kind of got in. I agree with you. He does look like the better back. But I think he's a good speculator back. But I still think if you're choosing between the two, McNichols would be my guy.
Final question, Armando. Go back to the quarterback position. Russell Wilson, who we talked about earlier, or Justin Herbert. 3 weeks ago, Justin Herbert to the moon. Now no one wants to play him. It's interesting how these things go, right? Is there a going forward? Yes, it's Russell Wilson. Yes, it's Justin Herbert. Or are they close enough that in a 10-team league, like honestly, it's kind of on a week-to-week scenario at this point?
I think this is one of those situations that we kind of alluded to earlier, right, Ray? Where it's like if you've been kind of rostering a quarterback that's on or off, like a Justin Herbert, who just gave us a pretty bad performance this past weekend. I think rostering both of these quarterbacks and playing them, matchup based, I think it's a good way to go about it. This week, I would slightly lean Justin Herbert, but I mean, I definitely think that this is one of those situations where you could have both of these quarterbacks and play matchups. I talked about the Steelers, I think week 16 playing the Ravens. I still haven't looked at the Chargers who they play week 16, but Ravens is secondary we've been targeting all season long, give up a ton of passing production. And we saw what Russell Wilson's capable of doing, in these kind of matchups. He's not afraid to sling it.
Chargers have Kansas City on the road this week. Then they go to Tampa Bay, who they'll wipe out.
That's a great matchup.
Great matchup. Denver, who just got killed last night, but it's a pretty good defense. Yeah. And then week 17, they're on the road against the Patriots. So it's playoff weeks are Tampa Bay, Denver, and New England for Justin Herbert.
And I think that week that he plays Denver, I think that week Russell Wilson's playing Baltimore, right?
He is playing Baltimore. You are correct.
So you could go Herbert against the Bucs, Wilson against the Ravens, and then go right back to Herbert against the Patriots, you said?
Yes.
I mean, there's your playoff scenario right there if everything plays out the way it is. Plus, we also have to see what happens with McConkey. If he loses his primary target, what kind of production are we going to see from Herbert? That's another factor that we have to wait and see. So I'm holding both of these quarterbacks. And as of right now, I'm going to play Herbert over Wilson, given that, there's a potential shootout there with the Chiefs.
There you go, Sean. Armando just won your league for you. Send the check to fantasyguru.com. No, it's easy. It's that simple. Click the subscribe tab at the top right corner. You see it on the screen there, folks. $65 the rest of the way. Get you all the football coverage, DFS, seasonal, and wagering, all of it. You get Armando's podcast, his live streams, his articles. You can talk to him in Discord, all of that over at fantasyguru.com. Thanks for the visit today, Armando. It's been a lot of fun. Same old this week in terms of your schedule. Anything new and different or more of the same this week?
More of the same and just NBA. I'll be doing a little bit more. I have 2 cheat sheets coming out. So Wednesday, Thursday, keep an eye out for those. If you guys haven't checked out the NBA content, it's really good stuff. Fedsty, the team there, Scott Bonder, Mike Sillo, Serge, everyone doing a great job there in the NBA section as well. So check it out if you haven't already done so.
And by the way, that's the MVP plan.
Yes.
Over at fantasyguru.com. You can click that subscribe tab at the top of the page as well. It takes you to the landing page. And check this out, folks. We don't talk about it a lot here on the show until Justin's around on Wednesdays, but Armando's right. We get NBA, college basketball, NHL, MMA, PGA, soccer, horse racing, and NASCAR. It's all the same. So basically everything that's not football or baseball is in that one package. It's the MVP plan. So check that out as well over at fantasyguru.com if you need Armando's basketball coverage. Justin, Bonder, the whole team, all of that over at the site. Armando, it's been great visiting with you today. Appreciate your time as always. We'll do it again in a week. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you then.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me on. Always a blast, Ray. Good luck to everyone this week.
You got it. He's Armando Marsal. By the way, follow him on Twitter. It's at Armando_Marsal. Follow me on Twitter X at The Ray Flowers, and follow this show, Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. For Armando, I'm Ray. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.